Three Corners is just your average small town, standing on the banks of a flood-prone river with a large pub anchoring the village at a once famous three-way intersection. Now it's simply convenient, as people chase the country dream, the country lifestyle, just not the unceasing agricultural workload. Population 2,000-ish. But like all small towns, scratch the surface and you'll be surprised at what you find underneath. In that sense, Three Corners is really no different to any other small town I know, except perhaps for some of the characters you might meet. Writer's block. At first, he thought it was an apparition. Then, a late-night hallucination, brought on by too much work, stress and the lack of sleep. But after the third night, he realised that what was happening outside was as real as the deadline he was pushing, as real as the domestic wrangling, as real as his 12-year-old's sudden sullenness, replacing that bright personality of, was it only just last year? Yes, this was real. He was fly in, fly out. Not for the minds though. Marketing. Capital city marketing. All in capital letters. Big names, big accounts. 3 days in the city office, 4 in his office that fronted their old rambling Queenslander, with its wide, wisteria-clad veranda and wooden shutters looking out to a small, quiet, tree-lined street. A small town where the kids could stay kids for a little bit longer. The cost of living was a little bit lower. Where the house they could afford was the one they dreamt of in the city, but it was too far out of their reach. And so they had come here. Three Corners. Here, they had an avocado tree, a mandarin and a mango. There was room for a veggie patch, a soccer net and a hammock. There was a shed out the back for his wife's pottery, and he had the front room as his office. And that's where he had started the evening, exactly like the one before. In front of the computer, desperately typing rationale after rationale, trying to get ideas with substance on paper for the big meeting next week. A concept he was trying to deliver. A concept yet to be seen before. A pipe dream. An impossibility. The deleted basket was full, another idea rejected for being too plain, too boring, already done. The office had become replete with recycled swearing and the air was stale and stuffy. Flinging himself from his chair, he looked malevolently at the computer, picked up his whiskey and walked out to the veranda. The nights were just starting to turn. There was a slight crispness to them, the faint smell of wood smoke and the leaves turning. The night was still. A faint fog had crept up from the river and the street lights illuminated the silence. It was past midnight. The silence of a slumbering village. Except for the small, clipped click of boot heels. A steady pace. And a faint swish. Leaning against the veranda post, he stared out at the silhouette of a woman dressed in Edwardian costume, a slight sheen to the fabric, dark in the shadows, a veiled hat that didn't quite hide the eyes that stared straight at him as she passed. Click, click, click. Hardly a minute later, a gentleman followed in a frock coat and top hat. He smiled above a well-groomed moustache, tipped his hat and continued without a sound. 20 metres behind him, arm in arm, a couple in fancy 50s gear, sequins and tassels, an ode to bad taste. Then, a large life-size teddy bear. 3 dogs, a golden lab, a sort of mastiff cross and something that looked like an industrial-sized mop. And finally, a rollerblader in the middle of the street dancing to a tune that couldn't be heard by anyone else. A ghostly and silent procession, a witness to his insomnia, his creative frustration. For they owned this road at night. 3 times he saw them before his writer's block broke. 3 times they saw him and said nothing, disappearing into fog and mist without a word. The only sound, the click of boot heels, a swish of satin, the faint chock of a cane on pavement, and the whirl of wheels on bitumen. The night walkers of 3 Corners. Today's episode of 3 Corners was produced by our maestro,
Postie,
and featured the spotlight tones of Jack. For more stories, go to hittheroadjack.com.au or subscribe to the 3 Corners podcast.